So Jeff, thank you for coming on the show. It's been an honor to call you a friend, mentor, advisor. But for the audience, tell us a little bit
Sure.
about yourself and.
Yeah, well, thanks, Tony. It's really a pleasure to be here, sit with you and chat a bit. Those who know us, I was a mentor at Seattle University for a number of years, and you were one of my first mentors, I think, because I actually passed 25 years of being a mentor there.
Wow.
Not too long ago. So, and then fate brought us back together when I had to make a switch out of Merrill Lynch for some stupid policies they put in place, and you were there to come in and pick up the pieces and keep me solvent. Keep me.
Yeah, it was kind of an interesting.
It was
roundabout way of getting reconnected.
They wanted my credit card, but they didn't want me anymore. Anyway, so a little bit about me. I'm gosh, I have a real long story, so I'll try to keep it short.
No, by all means.
Yeah, by all means, keep it short.
No, keep it long.
Yeah, well, I'm a kid from Brooklyn, New York, and went through the New York City school system, and was fortunate enough to get a job out of college, and so I've been working, all my life. But there was just something about me that was, maybe it was a little bit of a New York arrogance that I didn't necessarily want to work for someone else. Mm-hmm. And I actually had gotten recruited by a company in Seattle to work for them in New York, and it was really fun. Got a lot of good experience, but developed a little bit of a reputation as being a guy who can get things done. And I got asked to come out to Seattle to help start a company back in 1984.
What was the company?
It was called Source Kramer. Not the most, I'd like to tell you it was Amazon or Microsoft, but I can't tell you that. And so my wife and I literally sold everything we had. We were adventurers. We had 2 young kids. She hadn't actually finished college at that point, moved out to Seattle. And interestingly enough, the company at that point that we were starting had enough funds raised to pay half my move, half my salary for 4 months, and everything else we had to basically eat what we killed. So I learned how to raise money, how to fund, and so we started this new company, and fortunately, some technology overtook what we were doing. And even though we had a good idea, the company never really got its wheels going. But part of my investor group asked me to join them. And to make a long story short, we put together a team with the idea of buying companies in the Pacific Northwest with what was called leveraged buyouts in those days, where you'd use the assets of the company to borrow money. And it took some expertise to do that. I didn't have much to my name at that point, but myself, 2 guys, did a leveraged buyout of a manufacturing company in Renton in the construction scaffolding industry. And I was started out as VP of marketing, became president, chief operating officer, and then we sold the company to a public company after 5 years of running it. So we were very excited about that. I stayed with the public company for 5 years. We almost quadrupled the size. We made it from like a $20 million company to a $70, $80 million company in the public environment. And then I felt I was back in the corporate America world that I didn't want to be in anymore.
So even though you were an LBO.
Not those days. We were out of that. We were really, quarterly earnings, having to make the shareholders happy. And the chief operating officer and myself basically put together an offer and did an acquisition and made the company private again. And so I'm going through a lot of details. It was, to me, an amazing learning experience, these things. And we ran the company with outside investors for 5 more years. We owned about 28% of the company. And our outside investors and my partner and I had a serious disagreement about where we were going. And you learn that he who has the gold rules. Since they owned 70% of the company, we negotiated a passing of my partner and I, and they brought in a guy to dress up the company and sell it. And then I took a little bit of a hiatus, And maybe that's where my story gets interesting for me. As I sat down with a journal and I really thought about what did I want this next stage of my life to be like. I was 53 years old. And I just sat down and really talked about changing my perspective that work was now going to be sort of the engine that would create the quality of life that I wanted. And I worked on a whole list of activities. So today, I'm sort of on the downslope of the mountain, I guess, not working as hard as I have. But in the last 20 years, I wrote a good business book. It's been very successful. I found out yesterday, actually, we have 105 5-star reviews. I haven't looked at the reviews in 2 years. So people like the book.
What was the name of the book?
Making the Jump into Small Business Ownership by Nielsen and Levy. We co-authored it. And so in the last 20 years, I became the chairman of the board of the Entrepreneurship Center at Seattle University. My book became a class taught at Seattle Central University. I've been involved in some local social community activities that I think are really important for people to look out for their community. And I still have a interesting coaching business that you know about, where I became a franchisee of a company that helps people identify and evaluate franchises for themselves. And that's been very rewarding because I can bring into those discussions my personal life experience. And then I do a lot of sort of pro bono work, just working with entrepreneurs, just trying to encourage them in terms of how to get started, how to get out of that corporate rat race.
Yeah.
And just on a personal level, I've got a lovely wife, married somewhere around 42, 43 years. I should know the exact thing, but it's close enough.
It's close enough.
I've got 2 grown adult children, 5 grandchildren, and they're a very big part of our life.
What was your proudest moment after you made that transition from, working for somebody, so to speak, to, sitting down and journaling and then finding what you thought was where you wanted to go?
I think, the proudest moment or the thing that I feel most good about is that I really am the sort of captain of my own ship. I really, and you live and die on the decisions that you make.
Yeah.
But that I was able to transition from being part of an organization to starting my own coaching consulting business and developing a brand for myself where I'm pretty well known in the community. So an indication of that is that today I probably do 2 or 3 seminars a month as a subject matter expert. And I feel good about that, that I have had the background and the good fortune to have so many different broad experiences that people find value in inviting me to talk to their groups.
So that impact.
That's big, right. Yeah. I also still play tennis, and the guys I play with, they're killers. So I feel proud of the fact that I've stayed pretty healthy, and both my wife and I work not only on financial planning, long-term thinking, but also being healthy. And staying well.
Is that something you talk about in your mentorship?
Yeah, I do. When I talk to someone, I try to cover a whole broad. It's not just about work. It's not just about work. It's about why do we work and what's important in life. And of course, I talk to them about physical health, mental health, and financial health as well, in terms of you need to find the right environment and people to help you in all those things.
And do you feel that in the 25 years that you've been mentoring, do you feel that students are gravitating more towards entrepreneurship as they see what's unfolding in the job market? Yeah,
it's really interesting to have you ask that question. When I started, and I'll talk a little from the franchise perspective because I'm sort of close to that data. My typical client was a 55-year-old white guy who got laid off and through age discrimination is not necessarily going to get a job. So he'd be a good franchise candidate. I've sort of worked through the recession of 2010. When I started in 2002, there was a recession. Of course, we went through the pandemic. What's emerged out of that is a change in the mindset of people that they're looking for exit strategies outside of the corporate world. And more franchises are awarded today for people under 40 years old than people 55. And a good example of that is my youngest son came to me and said that he wanted to go have his own business and would I help him? It took me a while to say yes, but not that I don't love him, but I say, just get a job. And, he's got 3 kids. And so I helped him. He started a franchise in January. So absolutely, there's if you're, 50, 65 years old, if you're the edge of that baby boomer, you still somehow feel that working in a corporate environment is a good thing. But people in the younger generation, they believe in the gig economy. They believe in a portfolio life, which might include more time with family, more quality time, and work not being the center focus.
What do you think's driving that?
I think it's reality. I think the reality is that if you have fooled yourself that the corporations are there for your benefit, it's just not true. I mean, I learned that lesson, when my company got bought by a public company and I was on the board. It was very stressful because it was really about earnings per share. The way you get earnings per share up is you reduce cost. The way you reduce cost is you reduce headcount.
And that's in a 3-month time frame at a time.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. Right? Yeah. We have an earnings call coming up, with shareholders. What are we going to do? The old Jack Welch ranking systems, your ABCDs, your Ds get fired, your Cs get told they're going to be fired. I didn't like that. I didn't like it. But I think it's created a change in the culture where people don't. I think that those who say they have to get a job today are looking at the economic necessity and the fear of doing something on their own. And unfortunately, it's not sustainable. And the tough thing is when you get into your 60s today, if you haven't developed a broad base of generating income, you're not in good shape.
It's a risk. It's a huge risk.
It's like running into a wall. It's that the wall's there, but people don't take it seriously. So, I mean, I'm busy. I mean, I have been busier than I want to be because people just want to. The other problem too is that.
And you're in retirement.
And semi-retirement. I don't think I'll ever retire.
Yeah.
I can't. My wife retired, and my wife has a doctorate in curriculum instruction in mathematics, University of Washington, tenured professor, worked really hard, and man, she knows how to do retirement. You should interview her. I mean, my goodness.
Yeah. We'll ask her about retirement.
Oh my God, she just filled her life with things. And I've seen parts of her that I didn't see in the last 45 years of marriage, or artistic things that are just amazing. So I forget to get that with the question, but anyway.
But I think, it goes to show that now more than ever, you have to have number one, multiple sources of income, but also just think about other passions you have and live it now as opposed to later.
Absolutely. Well, you may or may not know, I did have a near-death experience 25 years ago. I was at a conference talking to 2 guys. We went over to this table where they were cutting up roast beef, and I took a bite of the roast beef, and next thing you know, I can't breathe. I can't talk. I knew what was going on, and I put my hand up to my throat, and one idiot slapped me on the back, which made it worse.
Yeah.
The other guy, I turned around, I backed into him, we did the Heimlich maneuver and saved my life.
Yeah. So
what you're saying is ingrained in me. You never know what will happen tomorrow. The track I was going down before that I wanted to mention is that one of the problems is a lot of folks don't get any entrepreneurial training. They don't have any entrepreneurial experience. They come at it from a perspective of fear. And so part of what I do is just try to create the fact that with education, with knowledge, with patience, with good planning, if you're a hardworking person, if you develop skills, you can apply them into something else and have it be for your own benefit.
Yeah. No, I believe that.
Yeah.
But, talking about that fear, right? I feel like every entrepreneur has that going into it. And it really just takes a leap of faith.
Yeah.
To do whatever endeavor you're focused on. And I was talking about this with another guy yesterday, and he hasn't generated revenue for 3 months now, but he's also been in his field for almost 20 years. And we're talking about it. I go, yeah, you might be fearful and worried about income coming in.
Sure.
But keep in mind, you've survived several recessions.
Yes.
And now you're coming from a place of worry, and you're driving a Mercedes, you own an apartment complex. What are you really worried about?
Sure. Well, some people are wired. That's their mode of operation. And candidly, a little fear, a little anxiety is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
It's sort of the motivation sometimes that keeps you going if you can't find the motivation someplace else. I've always found my motivation to be based on forward thinking and planning. And if I were to talk to that person, I would say, well, what was your plan when you started this business? Mm-hmm. What were your assumptions? Were your assumptions correct? Are there things that you have to do differently than you're doing now? But to just say, 3 months, no revenue. Well, how does that relate to your business plan and what you expected to happen every month? So sometimes we just let our emotions take over, and we don't use the left brain that helps us figure out, activity equals productivity. Good activity equals good productivity. But you got to have a plan.
Yeah. And speaking of plan, right? So for the students that you're working with, how do you get them? How do you have that conversation of getting them off the track of, I'm going to go graduate and go find a job at a Fortune 100?
Well, it's interesting. For some cases, that's not a bad initial plan. We have to realize too, we're living much longer today.
Yeah.
And so the issue of rushing into anything is not a good idea. And I know in my experience, when I graduated college, I eventually got a job with a company called American Hospital Supply. Mm-hmm. Huge multi-billion-dollar corporation. And they had sophisticated management training programs. So I learned a lot from them. So I'll tell people, look, make your mistakes on somebody else's dime. Part of it is sort of where their passion is, where their culture is, where their parents are in terms of, sometimes if parents or entrepreneurs, it's easier for them to make the transition. But I don't think there's anything wrong with having a corporate experience, but overstaying your welcome is where the problem is, or getting comfortable.
So if you're not progressing in the corporate ranks, you got to take a step back and ask yourself, what else could you? And
it's very hard today.
Yeah.
When I was in the corporate world, we had 6 people reporting to one manager. There was a lot of, there was basically a track to grow. Today, organizations are flat. You might have 80 people reporting to one manager. And it's very hard to move up in a corporation. You sometimes have to change from one company to another in order to move up. But, people they just get stuck, they get comfortable. And maybe even through your 40s, that's okay. Yeah. I got to tell you, once you get into your later 40s, the management is looking for ways of reducing costs.
Interesting.
And if I learned this from a mentor of mine who said that if you're in the creative stage, creative work in a company, you've got the best chance for longevity there. If you're implementing things that you help create, you probably have a reasonable runway. But once you're maintaining things, once you're just sort of, same papers, different date, then you can start hearing those little feet behind your head that your job is on the line.
Right. And do you feel like a lot of people see that too late?
Yeah, they see it after they get laid off.
Yeah.
It's like, I didn't see that coming.
Right.
It's crazy. But next Tuesday, I'll be doing a seminar for a company called Right Management. We'll have 86 to 90 people on that seminar nationally, all executives that have been laid off. Like
laid off.
I just was working with a guy who was the VP of Ford Motor Company. It's that level of people.
Wow.
And they get to that point, and companies say, "Thank you, we love you, but we don't, we'll miss you."
And do you feel like a lot of those people weren't ready to call it quits? Because you figure at the VP level, you should be at a place where you have that decision to make of, can I just retire or not?
Well, maybe. It depends on the lifestyle you live. You have a couple of homes, a couple of boats, big vacations, kids and $100,000 a year, universities.
Yeah.
It takes a lot. I think most people put their heads in the sand. They don't see themselves potentially being laid off. And I think that no matter what you do today, you have to be thinking of the next steps. Mm-hmm. That's something that I've always believed in. I believed in making sure that the work got done today, but I had to be planting seeds for what I need happening in the next couple of years. And when you're working for someone else, I think you can easily lose sight of that.
Yeah. So how do you talk them out of where they're at in their headspace? Because they've just been laid off. They might be feeling down on themselves, hard on themselves. They're questioning every decision they've made in life up until that point.
Yeah, it's depressing. And then their spouse, the trailing spouse, is, can't you just get a job? And I think first of all, people need someone who's going to give them straight talk. Mm-hmm. People that are going to care about them. I won't work with someone who is not a nice person. So you want someone who genuinely wants to figure out their own you 2.0, what they're going to do next. And I think, I start with a sort of a process of getting to know them. Tell me about yourself. Yeah. What if you could take all the burdens off yourself, all the fears off yourself of things that hold you back, what would your life look like? What would those things would be important going forward? So we start to build a vision of a dream, and then try to put into place those things that might help them get there. And it's something that's really gratifying to me. I mean, I love that kind of work. But I will tell you in all candor, and I'm good at what I do. I've been doing it for a long time. About a third end up wrapping their arms around a dream, putting in the commitment, going. The other 2/3, job market, get a job as a greeter at Walmart. They do something that they perceive as low risk.
Because the energy and the motivation aren't there.
Yeah. Well, it's more the fear.
The fear.
And like I have
Is it the fear of failure?
Sometimes it's fear of success. It's just it's the fear of putting the responsibility on your shoulders, not being told what to do by somebody else, not having a manager that's sort of making course corrections. And I knew for myself, I was not that person. I just could not sit down and be reviewed by somebody else because I knew I was putting in my best effort.
And you understood your value.
I understood. Well, I guess so. But it's just, I think it's very complex. But the numbers keep going up in terms of people that become self-employed. And part of why I like the franchise area is that, most people don't have that unique idea. And then if they have the unique idea, they don't have the structure to put together a business plan, to put together the financing, to do recruiting of either 1099 employees or real employees. So they have the idea, but they don't have that structure. They don't know how to market. They don't know how to evaluate really who are their customers, when they buy, how often they buy. Yeah. So the franchise world, even though you're not going to have a hockey stick type of business success, you will probably have a very predictable model that you can do as long as you want. It's no secret. I turned 75 last month, and I own a franchise. I did my 3rd renewal, and they were happy to keep me. They loved the fact, and made me feel extremely comfortable in being able to continue for as long as I wanted. If I was working for someone else,
they would have told you when you're done.
See ya.
Yeah. And there it is. More Americans are self-employed.
Oh yeah. The numbers just keep going up. I'm doing a big seminar on Tuesday, and I just refreshed my data, and it's just stunning. When you get into your 60s, I think 1 in 6 people are self-employed. When you get into your 70s, unfortunately, because some people still have to work at that point.
Yeah.
Half are self-employed, and I think I believe in entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
I really do.
So what would you say are the top 5 franchises that people are exploring
I'd say
right now?
ask me another question. Only kidding. I think I'll give you categories
Categories,
because the issue is because something might be hot, it may not be the right one for the individual. And so when I start working with someone, I tell them, legally you can sign a franchise agreement in 14 days. Franchising is very regulated, and there's certain cooling off periods, etc. But I tell them it's going to take 2 to 6 months, because we really want to vet out the franchise. We want to see what's the right fit for you. So the health and fitness area is always a very big category. And today you have yoga franchises, Pilates franchises, typical gym, boxing gyms, mixed martial arts gyms, all sorts of things in that health and category. The other categories, of course, you have the casual fast food. Even though that's a very big part of franchising, it's a sort of a small niche of people that go into food because it's 7 days a week, and it's not.
Yeah.
Those aren't lifestyle businesses.
And those are like your Dairy Queens, your Papa John's,
boba, whatever the drink is. Jimmy John's. Is those those just small boutique type of stuff. Once you get into things like Applebee's, they're very, very costly, big build out. So it's it's usually corporations that do those kind of investing. So you've got gyms, you got the fast food restaurants. You've got a lot of franchises, and it's an area that I like working in, that do home services. So they'll do kitchen cabinet repair. They'll do home painting, lawn care, window cleaning, small appliance repair, electrician work. Because people, you can't. That work is always there. In fact, my son went into a franchise that builds high end cabinetry for inside kitchens and pantries and bathrooms. And then there's another category of franchising that most people don't know about or think about, and I call it sort of the bridge franchising. It's where you don't work in the business, and they are things like hair salons and gyms and weight loss centers. The franchises, like in hair salons, there's probably 25 different hair salon brands. Some very niche, like you have the Fantastic Sams, and you've got the Sport Clips and the Great Clips,
but you don't need to be a hairdresser to be.
They don't want you to be a hairdresser. They want you to work on the business. Most people that do those kind of businesses have some other kind of work, but the work gives them the flexibility to spend 10, 15 hours a week, probably more when you're getting the places built up. They're great husband and wife type of businesses, but they want you to own multiple locations. And one of the questions that I want people to think about is, when they think about a franchise, are they looking to replace income, or are they looking, they're W-2, or are they looking for a return on investment, which might be more attractive than the stock market or some other kind of investment? So hair salons, those kind of things, they're not necessarily going to replace income, but they can give you a better return on your investment than you might have in a mutual fund, for example. I see.
So you invest cash, limited amount of management.
Yep.
And you're getting a return.
Yep. And you get, sometimes it's maybe 20% of the total investment in cash, and then the rest in an SBA loan. There's other vehicles today for financing these kind of things, and So those are some of the general categories. But I always, and this is a challenge to me, is I need to keep an open mind myself. Because sometimes you're working with someone for 2 months, 3 months, and all of a sudden you can see the light bulb going off as to what's the right fit for them. And it might be different than what we thought of when we first got started. So they have to keep an open mind, and I have to keep an open mind.
Yeah. And how long do these engagements last?
When I work with someone?
Yeah.
Usually, if they're going to get to the point where they will be signing a franchise agreement, 2 to 6 months.
Okay.
But, after a month, they might get a job. After a month, they might just say, hey, this isn't for me. Or what happens more often is the trailing spouse says, you're not going your own business. You're not using our home equity. You're not using our 401k. Nobody in our family has ever been in their own business. I don't want you to do it.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we see that a lot. And I see people's dreams oftentimes just being splattered by the fact that the fear from the trailing spouse could be a husband or other wife, or other family members. It's their own fear. They're not willing to be uncomfortable for a while that kills the dream. And I think if there's one thing that's frustrating for me is when I see that happen. And I have to be careful because, it's their partner. It's their wife. I can't say, I had one client get divorced though. He said, no, I'm doing the business. She's out of here in this case. And
you just help speed up the decision.
I guess so. It wasn't my goal in doing that. I've got one gentleman, name I won't mention, the business won't mention either, but it's hard for him because there's a misalignment in terms of goals right now. I've been very lucky because if you look back at my history and some of the decisions we've made, Andrea and I have made, without her support, I would have never been where I am today. So I attribute whatever success I've had to 2 things: her undying support, great support, and having some wonderful mentors myself. I've had 4 mentors. Actually, in my book, there's a couple of chapters that talk about how important those relationships are. And that's why I do my volunteer work.
Big shout out and a huge thank you to Zeakin for making this happen. They have an amazing platform. Check out their website, zeakin.com, zeacon.com.
So how did those mentors, did they all come at you at the same times. Point in life or different points in life?
No, different times. The first one that I can remember is, I had to, didn't have a lot of money. And when I actually went to Fordham University, which is a private college in New York and at Lincoln
Center. It's a sister school, right? In the Jesuit
Seattle,
system.
Absolutely. It's the Jesuit College of New York. And it's a great school. And I couldn't afford it, so I had to go to night school and work during the day. And one of the guys, the guy who I worked for, just sat down with me and said, what are you doing with your career? What are you doing with your life? And I said, I'm going to be a teacher. High school teacher. That's it. History. He goes, have you ever thought of being in business, or working in business? Never thought of it. So he said, well, let me help you. Let's think about it. And so when I graduated school, he offered me a job. And that was sort of my first, that he mentored me and made a big difference. And then I had another mentor when I was actually before I got to Fordham, one of my teachers talked to me about, what's your educational plan? I said, well, I'm going to go to Brooklyn College. Everybody goes to Brooklyn College. I said, He said,
you would have never left New York.
I would have left New York. And he said, why don't you consider going to Fordham University? And I go, Fordham, I'm a Jewish kid from Brooklyn going to a Catholic university. I don't think so. And he said, well, let's talk about this. And let's talk about the value system that the school brings in and how it might affect your life. So he was a great mentor. And then probably moving forward, when the first business I came out here to start raised money and never got off the ground because we had this sort of technology, we were overcome by another company's technology. There's a guy named Bill Greenwood, and Bill just saw something in me. He said, what are you going to do? I said, I don't know. We had run out of money in the business. He goes, how about if I pay you to do a market study and maybe join me to evaluate businesses to buy? And Bill became my probably the most profound mentor in my life. I mean, he made a huge difference. And between him and I and another guy, we bought this company in 1984, 85. And I spent 17 years, building it up, selling it, buying it back.
Yeah.
Bill has always been a dear friend.
So he helped you understand business, look at it from a different perspective. Yeah.
And he believed in me. I mean, that's probably one of the most important things. He believed in me that there was something there. So he always kidded me around too. And he had lost a lot of money in that first investment because you owe me. but he's been a dear friend and remains a dear friend today. He even has a nickname for me. He calls me Gus.
Gus.
But good guy. And then in terms of other mentors, probably my business partner. When we ended up, we were part of Flow, the public company, and myself and a guy named Tom became very good friends. He was chief operating officer. And we sort of constructed this plan to take the company private. And he a lot smarter than I, a lot more experienced than me. And he just, we just learned together. Learned together. And then it was very interesting, Tony. At some point, my wife said to me, you've been mentored, you've got a lot from it. It's time now for you to be a mentor. And so that resonated with me. And of course, I started my work at Seattle U. I think it sort of underpins my approach to coaching. I don't want to be a consultant. I don't want to tell people what to do. I just want to talk with them and just try to share what experiences I've had and maybe encourage them to.
And help them come to the realization of where they need to be at.
Yeah. Yeah. And if it's not the right thing for them at this point in their life, that's okay. But at least take the time to figure things out. There's some people get just caught in their own, wrapped around their own axle, and they just are afraid to learn, afraid to look at other things. And
I think that's part of society, though, and also just the structures that are in place to raise people in anywhere in the world, right? Because you have school, you got a bunch of teachers telling you what you can and can't do, so you're already conditioned by the time you get to university. And it takes mentors who have been there and done that to say, hey, this was my experience coming out of university or whatever.
Yeah, I think, I mean, it's just been a great ride. I think before what was I most proud of? I really feel good when I've reached somebody and helped them in some fashion. And sometimes it's not even thinking about it, but somebody was like, I was taken out to lunch the other day by a guy at KeyBank who I had met 10 years ago. He just started his career with the bank. He came to one of my seminars, reached out for a friendship, and we just kept in touch. And he said he just got a big promotion in the bank, and he wanted to take Andrea and I out to a really nice dinner to thank me for the mentoring. I didn't even think I was a mentor to him. I just liked him, and I enjoyed talking with him and just sharing ideas. And so those are things that make me feel good.
Yeah. And you see it.
Yeah, absolutely.
People are genuinely appreciative of the work you do.
So tell me about yourself, Tony.
Yeah. It's not about me.
I think we got to get that line in. Yeah.
What do you think of AI as it relates to even more people questioning where they're going to fit in society with?
Boy, that's an interesting question. I think I have to always, I'm a bit of a old school dinosaur in some ways. So things that I don't fully understand, I'm really hesitant about. So I've read that, when the Industrial Revolution came in, people started becoming fearful of that. When television came in, they became fearful of that. And so I have a belief that AI used correctly will enhance humanity in many ways, but I am fearful about the misuses potentially. And so, for example, if I'm on a Zoom call and somebody has their bot recording everybody's voice, I'm not necessarily comfortable with that because at this point I know that those voices can be used in other ways. So I have a really good open mind about it. I used AI for one of my seminars. I wanted to rebrand it because I felt that the name was missing some elements, and we I don't know, somehow a friend of mine helped me. We did it, and AI gave me 10 suggestions, and one of them was a winner. So I like it. I'm afraid sometimes that we'll lose the creative thinking that people can do themselves if they rely too much on it. But right now, I'm sort of have an open mind about it.
And you're not seeing an effect yet, and
to a degree,
and just people coming to you and say, "Hey, my job's been replaced by AI."
No, not seeing that. What I am seeing though is that people are having their resumes written by AI.
So you can tell.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I don't necessarily see their resumes, but it's sort of the talk around. I'm in a lot of networking groups of people that have lost their jobs, and so that's a big topic. But I would say the majority of people are embracing it in a constructive, positive way. So I want to see sort of where it goes. Yeah.
And going back to, because originally you were going to go into history.
Yeah.
So you understand the history of disruptive technologies and how it's affected. And, if you think about going back to what I said earlier about the guy that was in business for 20 years, he's worried, but he's just at a different place of worry, right? It's not the same worry of, is he going to be able to feed his family?
Yeah. Well, I think, again, we have to, I was a classical warrior. I was probably one of the best warriors that you'd ever meet. And I used to say that I earned half of my salary. I got paid the other quarter of my salary for worrying. I worried about everything. And 25% I was overpaid. That was my mindset. And I wouldn't sleep at night. I get to a point though that I learned that worrying is not productive. It a little bit might motivate you, but if it's making you sick, if it's keeping you up, if it's making you overeat, not a good thing because it really doesn't work. So I talk to people a lot about how do you manage that anxiety because it's not productive, and I've done a really good job myself figuring that out.
And you have to be really good at that because you need to coach people in a way that gets them to action.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. People sometimes say that they say, Jeff, you look so calm. And I say, I am calm, but sometimes it's like that duck when you look at the feet under the water, the feet are going like that, but I've learned to sort of balance it out in total. And also thanks to you and some people like you, my wife and I have always been really good planners.
Yeah.
So we planned out, our financial picture so that, we didn't have to worry as we got older. And that is a big factor. I mean, when people tell me, gee, you want me to go my own business, but I got kids in school and my wife doesn't work and I got a big mortgage and we just bought a boat. Those are realities. And so you have to deal with them and think about how do you sort of maybe untangle that web you got yourself into, that, $20,000 a month outflow, and figure out, is that what you really need?
Yeah.
And how do you get that? So I'll talk about that with folks as well. And then I'll get them over to you or, because that's the limit of my expertise, is to identify the problem, not the solution.
Yeah. So what was it like coaching your son? And what was that process like? Oh
boy, that's a great question. The younger guy apparently has been talking to me for a couple of years, and I have not been listening. Because
why was that?
Well, it's because as much as I encourage people to go in their own business, I know the frustration,
the sacrifice.
The sacrifice. It's just there's a lot of hard work, and when you're not getting that biweekly paycheck, which he's always gotten, it's hard. And I didn't want my younger son to go through that. So how do you not go through it? You keep a job all your life. Well,
and that fear came from a place of care.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I knew that. But so what I was doing was just sort of avoiding the discussion. And he was sort of asking me around it. And so apparently he went to Andrea and said, why isn't Dad listening to me? So when Andrea comes to me, I know it's serious. So we talked about it and decided that I was going to do the best I can, treat him like a client. And he's certainly competent to make his own decisions. And I took him through the whole process that I do with anybody else. And I tried to just stay as a coach to him as opposed to telling him what to do. And he went through it, and him and his wife chose the business that they thought would be the best for them. And he got his first order in the first month. He got 2 orders in the second month. And then he's used to getting a pretty significant income in his technology. He was the Amazon global program manager for Prime.
Yeah.
I mean, he had big jobs, and
so he was looking to exit the rat race.
Well, he did. I can't say it's a bad decision on his part. He went to work for a startup automotive company. He's always been. His college degree is automotive design. He's always been very close to that area. And he went to work for an electric car company, and the car company has not done well. In fact, its stock was just delisted.
Wow.
Yeah. So all the stock options and everything down. I invested in it. I've never owned a stock that's been delisted. It's sort of been down from 25 to 20 to 15 to 10 to 12 to 7 cents.
And then it's just gone.
Well, I think it's still there, but it's delisted. So I don't know where it is now.
So it's probably on the OTC market.
Yeah. So they tried. So basically, he saw that coming, and really put the energy into saying, "Hey, Dad, come on, let's go with this." And I was able, in my work, I get paid a pretty nice commission when someone's placed. So I gave him that money back.
Okay.
Which really helped him buy additional territory, gave him some operating capital to get started. So that's something I normally don't do.
Yeah.
But I made an exception in his case. And
how long has he been in business now?
He started January 1st.
Okay.
So it's really pretty new. And you just got to be patient. You got to be patient and work your plan. And I feel that the group he's with is a high quality franchise. And we'll see what happens.
Yeah. So what would you say is the biggest success for, do franchisors come back to you years later and say, hey, thanks for getting me into this, or talking
to me? You mean franchisees?
Yeah, franchisees.
Yeah, they do. And I don't want to tell you that everybody is blazingly successful. There's some percentage of people that one reason or another don't. It might be health. It might be they don't follow the franchise system. But no, I think where I get the feedback is, and people always ask me, Jeff, once I sign the franchise agreement, what's our relationship? Will you still be working with me? And I tell them, after 30 days, it'll be Jeff who, because you're going to get absorbed in the franchise system. You're going to find colleagues that will mentor and coach you. And there's very little I can do to help you. But let's connect through LinkedIn, etc. But I have a fairly healthy resale business. So people that I put in business 10, 15 years ago when they're in the 60s now want to sell. And they come back to me and they say, hey, could you help me sell? And sometimes I can, sometimes I can't, but I'll always spend time with them, giving them an understanding about the best way to position their business, particularly in the franchise arena. Which isn't always the best going to a traditional business broker. It's sometimes good to let the franchisor act as your broker, let them do non-exclusives with the different franchise coaches in the community. But I've had people, tell me that their lives have changed. I connect with all of them on LinkedIn and Facebook, so we sort of watch each other's families.
Yeah.
We stay in touch. And I know that some of the choices they made have been life-changing.
So for the positive ones, what's their biggest win for themselves, would you say? When you say in terms of change, right? What was it? Is it freedom? Is it money?
You mean who have become franchisees or on the edge of
franchisees that have been successful? what to them has been
Sure.
their success?
Yeah, I really believe it's having control of their time.
Mm-hmm.
That is the far and away the most important thing. But if you don't have income, and if you don't build equity, then it's a hobby. So that's important. I never want to take credit for the success or take responsibility if someone isn't successful, because I get them to the point that they believe that they're in the right spot with a good business. But I've had one story that it's just wonderful. A friend of mine, he used to be the president of a hotel chain. He retired at 44, and we were able to get him the rights to all of Sport Clips for Washington, Oregon, Alaska, and Idaho. And he had one point had 4 of his own stores, but maybe 60 stores of which he was getting royalties on. And then the franchisor came back and said, we want to buy yours back from you. And it was a very successful transaction. And I remember him and Lori took us, Andrea and I, out to dinner, just saying we so deeply appreciate what you did. But I mean, other than seeing him socially, I wasn't involved in his business life, but that decision that he got to, worked out really well.
Yeah, that's amazing. And going back to your leverage buyout experience, because I just read the book King of Capital.
Okay.
Have you heard about
No.
that book? It's the story of how Blackstone started, and and then it sounds like you were doing LBO during almost like the golden age
in the beginning age. Oh yeah, absolutely.
of
LBOs
LBO.
were
That was the thing, right?
Yep.
Was that ever a goal to become like a KKR or? And Blackstone was just starting around that time.
Interesting,
as well.
yeah, interesting. Yeah. We had a group called Windswept Capital, and Windswept Capital was Bill, Richard, and I, and the idea was never to have one company, but to be investing in and acquiring a multiple of companies and offering our management expertise. So that was the dream. Right. The first company we bought, we had a significant problem with. We had one of the owner's sons we thought was going to be the president of the company. It ended up that he was an entitled brat who was a horrible manager. We had to have the police come and take him out.
Wow.
We then found out that their insurance company had failed or was in failure, and it was held. We didn't know about. We weren't told that was happening, and we didn't find it out in our due diligence. So anyway, we ended up just focusing on that business, everything. So the idea of spreading out our management talent to different companies didn't work. At the same time, though, we bought the business for $1 million in cash, $4 or $5 million in leverage borrowing from the bank.
And was this that's 80% loan to value?
Yeah. It was quite a sales job on our part. But we did that, and I'm just trying to think back. This is a long time ago. And then we sold the company for stock at a $6 million value, but the buyer took our debt. So our investors got a 6-time return, and they got the stock in the public company, which went up significantly. So it was a sweet deal for everybody. So even though we didn't spread our management talent around like the KKR type of thing, it ended up being a significant success. And one of the things I learned is that when this insurance company failed, we had probably 4 or 5 lawsuits. The company, being in construction, always had product liability lawsuits, whether we were guilty or not. It was the nature of the business. And so we were in deep trouble. We went into special credits with the bank. because we couldn't meet our obligations because of the lawsuits coming through as uninsured. So that's when I became president and chief operating officer. I ran the day-to-day. My partner, Bill, worked with the state insurance guarantee funds to just get us some breathing room.
Mm-hmm.
And Richard worked with the banks to make sure that, they weren't going to shut us down. And so I learned through trial by fire.
Wow.
In those things. Yeah.
And before that, you didn't have any experience in LBO. You guys just said, we're going to do this.
Well, Bill was an investment banker.
Okay.
Bill was a smart guy.
Yeah.
And he also knew, he was a big player in Seattle. He knew the Jeff Brotmans, and he knew the Jack Benaroyas and those guys. So at that point in my life, I got to meet these guys and raise money from them. And John Kaiser, I don't know if you've ever heard the name John Kaiser. He started Expeditors, and he built the marina over in just north of Seattle. So we, back in those days, we were like, I had no money. Basically, but I was willing to work hard. And Tony, I learned so much. When you're out making a pitch to investors, you really learn quickly what works and what doesn't work.
Right. It's instant feedback. It's like fighting.
Exactly. Right? Without the bruises, without the visible bruises. Yeah. I remember once.
Ego might be bruised.
I was in front of John Kaiser, who's a wonderful guy, and he said, "Okay, Levy, what's your plan after 3 years?" I said, "Well, I'm probably gonna move on and do something else." He almost came across the table. He goes, "If you're a captain of the ship, you're the last man off, and don't ever think you're not."
Right.
And so I also learned that if people give you money, you have an obligation to them, a significant obligation to them. And I learned that a couple of times in my career. I don't know if you ever heard the name Sam Strom, but Sam was a very successful guy in Washington State. Him and Jack Benaroya.
Sam Strom.
Yeah, he started a bunch of automotive.
This guy?
Well, it's probably his kids these days.
Yeah.
Sam has been passed away for a number of years. But he was a godfather of giving. Yeah, he was just an amazing man.
Mm-hmm.
And so him and Jack Benaroya would come up to the earlier company, the first company that came out, and they'd want to look at our financials. And they weren't pretty good because we were really struggling. And they just told us, I don't care if it's good news or bad news. We just want the accurate reports.
Mm-hmm.
And they came up once again, and we didn't have the financials, and they said, there he is.
Yeah.
And they just basically abandoned us. So I learned, if you take money from people, you gotta give them the reports. You gotta answer their questions.
Yeah.
And I remember that guy. I remember my wife and I were on a plane to Paris once. He was on the plane, and he remembered me. And I was like, I still today, that guy who is a pillar of the community remembered who I was. And I think it was because I tried to always act with integrity. It wasn't, I wasn't responsible for the books. Somebody else was. But he always remembered me. I always remember him with integrity. So I've been lucky. I've just had a guy with a high school, with a college degree in American history. I think I've got my MBA numerous times over without actually getting it through my life experience.
Practically you're teaching an MBA course.
I taught a college course for 3 years at Seattle Central, and then been a guest speaker for years at Seattle University. And one of the things that I'm very proud of too, I was asked to be a fellow of the Fordham Consortium on Business. And it was the dean of the business school at Fordham had a grant, and the purpose of the grant was to bring business people together from around the world and have them study the business side of different stuff. So we would go out to New York, and we'd sit down with the big mucky mucks of the healthcare system, and we'd get to learn and understand what that was about. We went to Juilliard and learned about the business of the arts and music. It was just great. So I was a fellow. So I'm a fellow.
Yeah.
A fellow of the Fordham Consortium on Business, and I really something I'm very proud of.
Yeah, especially, going back to your university
Exactly.
after having just like zero experience coming out of there.
Yeah. Yeah. So
it's an opportunity for you to give back too.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've actually, we had a program during the pandemic called, we're Rams, the Fordham Rams.
Mm-hmm.
So we were Rams helping Rams. So we would help students who were, struggling during the pandemic, and so they'd align us with a graduate. So, yeah, I just have a lot of different things that I've been able to do in the last 25 years or so, because I changed my perspective of my work.
Right.
My work was no longer my life.
Mm-hmm.
My work was going to be an economic engine that would give me the life that I wanted. And I spent months and months sitting down with a journal trying to figure out what were those elements that I wanted to reach and do.
So you started from your lifestyle. What do you want your lifestyle to be? What do you want your family to be proud of?
Right.
And whatnot?
Legacy. It's all about legacy. and impact and how I use my time. And again, part of it is because I had that near-death experience. I just realized that, if you ask me today, what is the most valuable thing I have? I would say my time. And then, of course, my family. But if I didn't have any time, I wouldn't have the family.
And the health.
Yeah, and health.
Right.
So we both, Andrew and I, do a lot of work around trying to stay healthy. Mm-hmm. And when you started saying that they're going to get rid of cookies, it scared me at first, and I realized what you were talking about.
So I guess to close out, right?
Yeah.
What would be your top 5 ideas for people that are just graduating?
Yeah.
To consider as they
Sure.
And then also for those that have been laid off at a later stage in life in their 40s or 50s, what would you say to those guys?
Well, I think people that are graduating today is to realize that we live in a world of opportunity and not scarcity. Mm-hmm. As long as I've been around, and I've lived through many recessions. I've lived through the Vietnam War. I've lived through political upheaval. There's always opportunities, and you have to have the right mindset. Mm-hmm. And the foundation that you have to have is being open to learning and identify mentors and coaches and attach yourself to them in a constructive way. And also come with the idea of what can you do to help other people. Mm-hmm. And of course, when you're just graduating college, your abilities are somewhat limited, but you can volunteer your time. You can, people appreciate sometimes when they're listened to, mm-hmm. When they have a story to tell and you genuinely want to hear it. So I think getting out of college, really set your priorities straight. Of course, you want to start understanding what your true gifts and your skills are, mm-hmm. and what you can be successful at, because those will reflect later in terms of longer term decisions that you make.
It compounds.
Yeah, it really does. Yeah. So you need to really understand yourself. So that, and I, if you can get a job, but also give that person that you're working for more than you're getting in compensation. That's the best way to evaluate, to mm-hmm. Go as far as you can in the company and take every opportunity to learn that you can. Read a lot of business books or whatever, and also be involved in your community. And then if you have lucky enough to have a spouse and a family, never take them for granted, and realize that that's a growth, that relationship takes time to nurture and grow. It's not perfect from the beginning. And then as you go forward to people in their 40s and 50s, I'd say, hey, if you didn't get some entrepreneurial training when you were younger, let's get on the stick now. And let's first of all, let's make sure you've got a financial planner that you can talk about. What do you have to do to get to a point or an age where you can choose whether you work or not? Not retirement. Yeah. Retirement means you stop working, you start living. We don't want to do that. We want to start living today. Yeah. So you want to have that in place. You want to inventory your transferable skills. Again, with the financial planner, figure out if you do a business or if you have investments, how much do they need to contribute to that long-term mm-hmm. financial security?
To buy back their time.
Yeah. And again, I think, to me, just being part of the community. Don't get so wrapped around yourself that you lose sight. And there was a thing by Dale Carnegie, who very motivational guy, who said you can get anything you want in life if you help other people get what they want.
Yep.
And I believe that's very true. And probably the most important thing I can share with someone is that, we're going to live longer than we think. And, retirement age is right around 62 to 65. That's how the world looks at you. You might have 20 or 30 more years of productivity.
After that.
You got to be thinking about that. And then also for me, when I started thinking about retirement, I didn't think about what's that age and position that's best for Andrea and I. I said, I want to be able to help my aging parents. So that changed the vision. And I wanted to be able to be helpful to my children and my grandchildren. So that sort of changed the idea. So to me, the only way I could do that is have my own business that could be successful, but I can control my time and I can work as long as I want. I still make money today, and we put it into a fund for kids' education or family issues and stuff. So hopefully those answered your questions.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So tell me about yourself. You can end it with saying it's not about me.
It's not about me. And, so where can people find you?
Oh, that's great. Well, if they look me up on LinkedIn, I have an unusual spelling of my first name. It's Jeffry, no E, it's only one E, Levy. And so they can look me up on LinkedIn and feel free to reach out and connect that way. I have an email address, Jeff L, the eSource at Comcast.net. People can reach me that way. But probably the best way is just look on LinkedIn and find a guy who's, done the things that I've talked about today. And my business is called the Entrepreneur's Source. Okay. Which is a great name. Yeah. Because that's what I try to be.
Well, Jeff, thanks for coming on the show.
Tony,
always a pleasure to see you.
It's a pleasure to be seen when you get to be my age, let me tell you. But I appreciate the work that this young man's been doing in the background. It's been fascinating. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning into the show. If you found value in what our guests shared and what we share on the show, please feel free to share with your friends and family. We'd love to see you back here. Thank you again. And you can find us on pretty much every social media channel, YouTube, iTunes, and Spotify as well. Thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in. Step into the unscripted arena.